counselor for Camp Echoing Hills. His time there sparked a passion for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities that eventually led him to RHDD Incorporated. He's been employed with RHDD since 2003. Joshua works as a DSP in residential and adult day service environments and has served on DSP's council from 2016 till 2018. He's the 2018 recipient of the Amy Gurwitz Leadership Legacy Award and a graduate of OADSP's Leadership Launchpad program. In addition to his work as a DSP, Joshua grew up alongside a sister with autism and a cousin with a developmental disability. Let's welcome Joshua to the podium.
Wow. Wow. Does it look as cool where you guys are sitting as it does where I'm standing right now, seeing all this? This is amazing. It's completely amazing. So, those of you who know me know that it's not a matter of if I'll get emotional, it's a matter of when. So we're going to try our best to keep that towards the end so that I can say what I need to say, because I think I really need to say it, and it's something that needs to be heard, and I'd like to, just for a really quick though, for the DSPs out there, one more time, can you guys make as much noise as possible for a second? Now, I could have asked you just to hold up your sign. I could have asked you to put up your hand, but I specifically asked you to make noise. So put a pin in that thought, and we're going to come back to that right at the end, okay? So, as Joe said, I've been in this field for quite a while, and from different perspectives. And I'm the sort of person who I tend to observe a lot. I see and take in a lot of details. So I've been an observer and an active participant in this field over the span of really my entire life. And in that time, I've had the opportunity to see firsthand the impact that quality service has on the lives of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I've seen people who are branded with words, and I'm sure some of you have heard these words, they're not my favorite words, but words like high behavior or low functioning. I've seen people with these labels put on them who have been able to truly flourish despite those. I've seen people who are lonely and withdrawn blossom into just truly dynamic people with this wide array of social connections and passions and hobbies and interests. I have seen people connect with neighbors and communities. I've seen people whose horizons were very, very small, who quite literally have traveled to the far corners of the earth and achieved major bucket list things and major life milestones like marriage, home ownership, and invested in the world around them. But the one thing I think I've seen the most consistently in this time is that behind all these accomplishments, behind all these things, are a team of dedicated DSPs who've been uncompromising in their efforts to help the people they support thrive. So DSPs, what they do more than anything, if your job was distilled down to a sentence, is that you coordinate and help realize major life developments for people. However, when we're out in the community, when I'm out in the community among my neighbors and peers, it's actually very rare for people to even know what a DSP is or understand even slightly the magnitude of this profession. So one thing I get a lot is, isn't that like an STNA? We hear that one a lot. Or, oh, is that like home health? That's another one we hear quite a bit. And then there's always, this is my favorite one, the most dreaded of all of them, and that's the glorified babysitter comment. So if you've heard that one before, go ahead and make some noise again just to get it out of your system. It's truly awful, and it's so troubling because it's just so ignorant and so unaware of what goes on. It's just a horrible assessment of what we do. DSPs, what we do provide services that are in the same vein as home health at times, and that's not an insignificant service that we provide. It's an important part, but there's so many other things that we do. The scope of our practice is broad and it's varied, and it's at times a little bit, it's just depending on the day, what we wake up and what we do from day to day, it'll change. So, there are days where we wake up and we are nurses, but there are days we wake up and we're advocates. We wake up and we are doing a practical leg of social work. We are teachers one day, talk therapists the next, interpreters often, life coaches, yes, we're life coaches at times, transportation coordinators, definitely, nutritionists, money managers, home maintenance, plumbers occasionally, physical therapists, record keepers, employment coaches, mentors, and times we're just family. And this is not just in name alone. All these different titles that we have and these hats that we wear, there are many, many hours of comprehensive training and education that go into developing them. We need to be walking Swiss Army knives of just tons of professions, and we need to be well oiled so that we can shift in and out of these roles on a moment's notice every day. There's a lot of demand on us to be everything. So I feel like publicly we do have not a great perception, but at least a marginal perception of what accessibility means for people with physical disabilities, but not really for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I think if things like wheelchair ramps and elevators are seen as an essential tool for accessibility for physical disability, then DSPs are that counterpart for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We're just as vital, we're just as important. And if we really want genuinely integrated communities, that we talk about this a lot, integrating into the community, then we are an absolute necessity. We're a high priority. Our job requires flexibility and consistency. And when we're not there to perform that, there are people, very precious, valuable people, gifted with just so much to offer to our society, that suddenly they cease to be able to traverse their own communities safely and consistently. And unfortunately, one of the other things I have seen in my observations in my years in this field is that the reality I just talked about, that cessation of being part of our world, is a looming likelihood that just stands over everything we have worked to build over the past 50 years. With a critical lack of support, a struggling workforce, and a lack of professional identity, DSPs and those that support them face really some fairly daunting obstacles, I'm afraid to say. The national turnover rate is at or over 50% for DSPs. So I want to take a second and look at this crowd around you right now. Look around you. Now in your head, visualize half the people here are now gone at any given moment. Then it's just, within 6 to 12 months, that's the time frame that most DSPs leave the field. So in 6 to 12 months, half of these people could be gone. This reality is a brutal truth for DSPs, but it's also an even worse one for the people that DSPs support. So let me ask you, when you were driving here today, would you have driven here on a car where you knew 2 of the tires were going to blow at any moment? You had no idea when they were going to go, but you knew it was going to happen? How safe would you feel in that car? How far would you be willing to travel in that car? Well, I'm guessing not very far and not for very long. So that's exactly what we are asking the people we support to be in, the situation we're asking them to be in, when we cannot provide our services with consistency and commitment. Aside from my own anecdotes about this, there has been so much research by professional and academic organizations across the country that can correlate a direct link between the longevity of a DSP's time serving a person and that person's overall satisfaction with their life. Long-term staff facilitate growth and achievement of long-term goals. Goals like gainful employment, marriage, home ownership, the ability to travel, the ability to maintain meaningful family and community connections. But when long-term staff are a scarcity, all of these goals are pipe dreams. We are just talking about ideas, not realities. We're just building up hopes so they can be dashed later. Routinely, DSPs that leave the field state their reason for doing so is that they can't make a living wage in this field. There's no need for this to be an elephant in the room. That's the hard reality at the heart of this. National wage averages are between $11 and $12 an hour, but there are many who are earning less. And I know many, many providers would gladly pay a living wage, but they can't because the current resources granted by state and federal funding streams make operation difficult as it is. There's just not a budget to do more in most cases. Because these employers cannot pay wages that compete with for-profit industries, I saw a lady earlier today with a wonderful sign that pretty much boiled it down. You can't compete with Walmart, you can't compete with McDonald's. So many DSPs are either leaving or they're working 2 jobs to make ends meet. And honestly, I'm just gonna say this, there's absolutely no reason that people should have to work 2 jobs in this field. It is unacceptable. It's frankly a huge failing. The University of Minnesota's data on our field reveals that almost half of DSPs are receiving some form of government assistance, and 1 in 5 are below poverty levels, even while working full-time hours. Again, this is completely unacceptable. If you're angry, you should be. You should be. Additionally, DSPs often don't have avenues for career growth, even when they choose to stay for a few years in the field. With no opportunities to advance, career-oriented people, and there are career-oriented DSPs, will move on to other industries that will give them that opportunity. We consistently talk about DSP as a career option, but let's be frank, let's be really, really honest. It's often not a very good one, not as it is now. When we think of jobs that people consider to be a good job, in quotes there, what are those qualities we're thinking of? Well, really there's 2. 1, a wage that allows a sustainable lifestyle that can support a family, and 2, opportunities to secure new positions and higher pay with the time invested in the company. For most DSPs, I'm tripping over my own tongue, I apologize. For most DSPs employed now, neither of these are a reality. So how can we insist that we value the lives of people with disabilities when we routinely don't demonstrate that in how we pay those that are working to support them, honestly? The truth is we don't, we really don't. It's lip service. It's an idea that is about branding ourselves rather than what our actions actually illustrate. The lack of professional identity is another obstacle and a major one. It's increasingly difficult to recruit for a job that nobody understands. There are not children, and this is going to sound sad, but it's just the truth. There are not children in school right now telling their teachers that they want to grow up to be a DSP because they don't know, and if they did, oftentimes it's not an exciting prospect. We're an invisible workforce servicing people who are also usually invisible. The public can't embrace us when they have no idea who we are and what we do. We cannot advocate for the people we support when our own voices are so routinely diminished. And that ultimately, guys, that's the heart of this issue. And the odds are stacked against our workforce, and should it fail, the people we support are the ones who are going to pay the big price here. Those of us working in this field can rebound to other fields. We have that luxury, but people who rely on us for service do not have the ability to flip a switch and stop needing service. They cannot turn a disability off. And we cannot just keep paying that lip service to the value of these people and continually putting them in this frankly very precarious position. A lack of support for DSPs is a lack of support for people with disabilities. Plain and simple, no arguments. This crisis is very real. I need you to understand, DSPs, this is real. It's not just PR speak. And its consequences are an inarguable decline in the quality of life many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Without a dramatic change in the paradigm of this field, countless people are going to fall through the cracks. What works within the harsh parameters that we have of our meager workforce and our budgets will take precedence, and numbers will rule. And these will rule over what is wanted and what is needed by the people we serve. And if you're familiar with places like Willowbrook State School, the horror of places like that will return. It's not a ghost story, it's not a boogeyman, it's a fiscal reality. Fortunately, we have opportunities here and now to avoid these outcomes. Our voices may not always be heard, but we have the power to make them more heard. We can raise our visibility and reinforce our platform, one person, one day, one step, one action at a time. So I'm asking all of you here to please commit to doing that. You can do so many different things. You can call and write your representatives in Congress and ask them to support legislation that would secure a standard occupational code for DSPs. You can share your experiences with friends, family, and neighbors. Use platforms like social media to help educate the people in your life about what DSPs do. Go live on Facebook today. Get visibility for yourself and for the people around you. and let them see what the value of your work is today. Engage your organizations. Use whatever talents you have in any way you can. There's an urgency to this, and I'm not trying to scare you, but it's real. We need to engage. So let people know and understand that you, DSPs, provide a vital, valuable professional service. We are not glorified babysitters. I asked you earlier to make noise, to use your voice rather than to do something easy like raising your hand. You need to use your voice. You have a voice. You have the privilege of a voice. The people that we are serving do not. Use it, please. I'm begging you. And we need to understand that we are the bridges to the community for the people that we support. We are the bridge that they need. We are valuable because we support people who are valuable. There are many ways to express support for people with disabilities, but a well-paid and trained DSP workforce is the most practical way to do that. And it helps reconnect our communities and make them stronger. It heals hearts that are broken by a system built on centuries of oppression. And by healing those hearts, we're doing more than just helping individual people. We are helping a country that's already divided so deeply on so many different axes. What we do is important because who we support is important. Do you believe that? Yes. Do you really, really believe that? Yes. I do. I truly do. And if you're like me and you believe this, then it's time to make sure that the people, how we support the people who have chosen, excuse me, I'm tripping all over myself. I'm like 4 lines down now, because if you're like me and you truly believe this, then it's time to make sure your value is reflected in the world around us. It needs to be evidenced in how we support the people who have chosen to do this work. We need to see the value tangibly in terms of pay, in terms of workforce, in terms of consistency. We are dedicated, we are skilled, we are proud, and we are professionals, guys. We are everyday activists. And affirming our work is an affirmation of the value of people with disabilities, and it helps to shift our nation's perception of them towards one of appreciation and acceptance. And let's be honest, that shift is so long overdue. So please use your voice any way you can. Engage your organizations and engage your community. That's all I have to say about that.